Leading up to the release of Christopher Nolan's Tenet, I've been watching and reviewing each of his films in release order. Well, with the fresh watching of the Dark Knight trilogy under my belt, it seemed like the perfect time to stop and rank all three of Christopher Nolan's Batman films from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place to consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of Christopher Nolan's trilogy of Batman films. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. One more thing before we get started, I'm very active on social media, specifically Instagram and on Twitter. On Instagram, you can see some exclusive videos, behind the scenes type stuff. I'm very active in my DMs. And then over on Twitter, I post kind of all throughout the day and give my little quick thoughts on any movie news that drops. With that said, let's get started. Easily coming in last place is The Dark Knight Rises. Christopher Nolan's epic conclusion to the Dark Knight trilogy has no shortage of ambition, massive size, and plot holes and contrivances. On the positive, when it has its strong moments, it's just as good as the previous two films. When you see Alfred crying over his failure towards Bruce Wayne, when it has little moments kind of closing out certain arcs throughout the three films, it hits all of the right notes for me. I actually really enjoy Tom Hardy's weird performance as Bane with this strange accent, kind of extreme physicality, the way that he talks, the dialogue that he gave him. All that stuff really works for me. Catwoman, thought she was a nice addition to the franchise, and I can absolutely respect the ambition that went into this film of trying to continue to up the ante, tell this story that covers a massive amount of time, has huge stakes, all of that. I can appreciate what they were going for. But rewatching this film, this might be Christopher Nolan's sloppiest script. It makes a bunch of script and story mistakes that Christopher Nolan is famous for not making. And I think at the core of this, they just kind of wrote themselves into a bit of a corner with where The Dark Knight ended, and to kind of follow through on that plot line of Batman being a villain and them succeeding and saving Gotham, put them in a bit of a tough spot, especially since they decided to use Bane as the villain. It creates a scenario where Batman's been retired for 7 years, becomes Batman again. They do the Nightfall story where Batman's back is broken, so he has to become Batman again, only to retire from being Batman. In which case, that's an awful lot of Batman not being Batman in a Batman movie that's almost 3 hours long. And in order to tell this massive story and close out the trilogy at the same time, they kind of had to mash the pieces together with contrivances, coincidences, logical leaps, the villains having this unbelievably complex plot just so that Batman would have time for his back to heal so we could have a big showdown and stop the villain in the end. And then even beyond that, it had to come up with more cartoony and contrived scenarios in order to justify the big moments of payoff and the twists and turns in the final 20 minutes. And Christopher Nolan traditionally has avoided those sorts of gimmicks to get to the big moments of payoff. Whereas the previous two films felt masterfully crafted, this one feels like they did the best job they could with the amount of time that they had. It still has some great moments. I still like this movie, but it is far behind the other two films in this trilogy. Our runner-up is Batman Begins. Now, to be clear, The Dark Knight and Batman Begins basically go back and forth in my mind as to which one comes out on top. A big part of that is that I love origin stories, especially origin stories like this one, where we dive into the character of Bruce Wayne and understand the psychology that sent him on this journey, and then we watch him transform from an angry young Bruce Wayne into the hero, into the legend, through training montages, his mind being shaped, a mentor in his life, all of it turning him into one of my absolute favorite superheroes, Batman, and all masterfully done by Christopher Nolan. I mean, for me, I love the first half of this movie more than I like The Dark Knight. Basically, all the way up until when Falcone gets arrested, that's my favorite part of this entire trilogy. This story of him becoming, even when he gets back to Gotham and he's putting all the pieces together, meeting Gordon for the first time, creating the persona that is the public personality of Bruce Wayne as the disguise. I love all of that stuff. And a huge part of that is even the casting here across the board is pretty well fantastic. Liam Neeson does a great job of both playing the mentor father figure and then eventually the villain in the film. Of course, Morgan Freeman as this Lucius Fox character adds a little bit of humor that the movie needs just the right amount, right alongside Michael Caine as Alfred, who can just put in those little quips firing back at Bruce Wayne. Christian Bale, especially in this movie for me, kind of brings a physicality to the role. You can buy him as this person just filled with rage, but also determination that he's just channeling it in a positive direction. He can play the playboy when he's the public persona, and then he can feel a little bit embarrassed when he's seen by Rachel in public as that persona. He pulls off all of it so very well. Kind of where this one got knocked back on rewatching is that it does lose a good bit of momentum as soon as Falcone is arrested. Everything in the movie is kind of building up to him becoming Batman and taking out the person that was running the organized crime. And so as soon as that happens, the movie has to reshuffle a little bit and refigure the pieces to go into the third act and give us our big massive finale where we have the twist return reveal of who Ra's al Ghul is. So it loses some momentum there, and it never gets as strong for me as it was in that first bit of the film. But I absolutely love this movie. It is a great comic book movie and one of my favorite origin story films that is out there. But coming in first place is The Dark Knight, a film that is often spoken of as one of, if not the greatest comic book movie of all time. And that partially is because of the fantastic performance of Heath Ledger, but a lot of that is because Christopher Nolan decided not to take influence from other comic book movies and just make another genre film. He decided to try and make a great crime thriller using the Batman mythology. He took inspiration from Heat and A Clockwork Orange and The Wire and then also the comic books, of course, and blended it in together into this film that had deep themes about escalation, consequences, while being also very good as this crime film with the skin of a Batman movie, and of course the cherry on top being once again fantastic performances. When it comes to Heath Ledger, what made this performance so special is that so many of us went into it like confused as to why Heath Ledger would be cast, because we had seen him in as teen heartthrob in all these other roles where he was so far removed from the Joker. And then when we watched the movie, we just saw this new characterization of the Joker that was terrifying, that still had that charm and humor there, but not in just kind of the normal jokester sort of way that we'd seen before. But what we did not see when we saw this character on screen was Heath Ledger. We did not see anything that we assumed would be there. He disappeared into this terrifying new role that was kind of this perfect antithesis, this perfect counterbalance to what Bruce Wayne was doing in the city. A couple other things that just elevate this film is that they decided to do things in how they filmed it to just amplify the scope and size of the film. A lot of that is that they shot on location in an actual city with IMAX cameras, and so you felt like you were in this massive city as opposed to kind of on sound stages, really good sound stages, but that's what they were on when it came to Batman Begins. And here you just right out of the gate with that opening sequence see this big city and you feel like you're present in a real place with all these extraordinary characters showing up inside of it. Even the way some of the action was shot, I thought it was done better in this film. Whether the car chase sequence, which was shot in IMAX and looks massive because of it, or even in the hand-to-hand fight scenes where they pulled the camera back a little bit more so you could see what Batman was doing. With all that said, I'm not someone that fully puts this movie in the masterpiece category. There are a few problems here. There's a couple of scenes that are left dangling, especially at the fundraiser scene where the Joker's still in it after Batman falls out a window and uses his body to brace the fall for Rachel. And then likewise, as you move into the last 10 minutes of the film with Two-Face, I think that works a lot more thematically to set up that final little scene than it does structurally. I wish they would have handled the Two-Face character differently and integrated him in a way that let him really shine a little bit better. But overall, of course, this is one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. It's a fantastic film overall, and it leads to such good payoff in the final 10 minutes of it that it comes in at number 1. Remember to follow me on social media at those links down below in the description. Come back later this week. I'm gonna rank all the MCU and DCU movies together in one video. It's called 31 on 31. That's gonna drop this Friday. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.